Morning, everyone. I would like to begin our Global Business Series number 7. Thank you for joining our Japan Real Estate Market Trend. My name is Frances Huang, a Global Business Council member, and I would like to thank Alex Lee, 2020 Global Business Council Chair, our Global Business Council Co-Vice Chair, Pauline Lam and Shenzhen, Mindy Yi, 2020 President, and Yingber, 2020 Immediate Past Chair of NAR Global Advisory Board and 2020 Vice Chair of CAR Global Real Estate Forum. And a big thank you to all of you to make this virtual meeting possible. Welcome, everyone. Before we start, all participants will be muted. Should you have any questions or comment, please enter them into the chat box. Shenzhen, GBC Co-Vice Chair will read your questions during the Q&A section of the meeting. Please stay until the end of the session for a chance to win gift cards. These gift cards are sponsored by Loan Direct Inc., Joe Lam, and Theresa Nguyen. On November 13, 2015, West San Gabriel Valley Realtors Global Business Council delegation visited and signed an MOU with Japan American Real Estate Collision Office. Our goal is to exchange real estate information between Japan and USA. Today, we're glad to invite our special speaker, Mark Kitabayashi, to update us on Japan. Mark Kitabayashi currently serves as a global ambassador to Japan and Mongolia. He's from Seattle, Washington State. Let's welcome Mark Kitabayashi.
Thank you very much, and I'll be sharing your screen. I'll be sharing the screen right now. So if you want to hang on 1 minute, and we'll get there as well. And good morning, everyone. So my name is Mark Kitabayashi, and we'll spend about half an hour, 45 minutes with you and updating Japan and how the Japan real estate is. A quick background on myself. Only reason I'm saying that is I was born in Japan and immigrated to the United States. I immigrated to Southern California. I grew up, spent my time in Torrance, Gardena area. Then I went to boarding high school up in the Ventura County, Thousand Oaks. Then I came back actually for my college. I went to Cal State LA, UCLA, and I lived in San Gabriel between Las Tunas and Rosemead off of Broadway with my grandmother. So I do have a good tie within your community that you're there on the West San Gabriel Valley as well. And that is before, and so that was in the mid 80s to late 80s. So those are when the Asian invasion, I shouldn't say invasion, but Asian movement towards that area was just starting. And then I worked in New York I went to grad school in New York. I worked as a corporate travel agent in New York for a Japanese travel agency. And I worked for international trading company, and I worked in Japan for 3 years as well. And I was doing import-export, came back to Seattle, and I've been a realtor in Washington State ever since. And 2006, 2009, I was a local president. 2013, I was your state president of Washington State. And in 2017, I was an NAR committee liaison for all the global business. I was in charge of all the global business for NAR. 2019, I was your regional vice president, one of the regions. Your region is 13 as a California. My region was 12. And I am a global ambassador team since 2010. I'm currently a global ambassador to Japan and also to Mongolia. And also I sit as a RES national and Greater Seattle Advisory Board, and I'm one of the founding members of the Seattle chapter of ARIA. So anyway, but before we get into Japan a little bit, I just want a quick global business quick tip, and most of you know that as well. And I think when you're looking at the global business, it's always good to understand the high and low context culture. And if you have not taken a CIPS class, look at high and low context culture. It's kind of generalized to give you what part of the world is they act a certain way than business, everything else. And you know, commercial or residential, be expert. And just remember, MLS is not the norm in the rest of the world. Do not pretend. This is the biggest pick. Do not pretend that you know everything. Ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. And just remember, the home ownership is not just American dream, but home ownership is actually a global dream. It's a dream of everyone. So let's talk about Japan. A little bit about geography and the population. Japan's population is 126 million. Tokyo is about 14 million. Comparison to LA is LA County is 9 million. So what does that look like in Japan? Geographically is, Japan's about the same size of California. And out of that, 2/3 is a mountain in Japan. So people live on a 1/3. So what does that mean as far as the density is concerned? It's not as dense as Hong Kong, but density is like everybody in the United States living in Southern California. So that's the density of Japan as well. Japan's made up of the 4 large islands and other Okinawa and other smaller islands as well. You see it there as well. And Tokyo, you see it is the capital of everything. Like I said, 14 million people live in Tokyo area. So including the Tokyo region, over 10% of the population live in the one city. What does the economy look like? The 3rd largest in the world, and we depend on the import and raw materials, fossil fuels, everything. We're only sustainable about 15% of the food within our country. And of course, only one thing that's always sustainable has been the rice. And as far as a business is looking at economy is concerned, we have a word called keiretsu, meaning the business groups. And a famous one will be Mitsubishi. You see on the picture on the left, that is a picture of Tokyo Station. On the upper side is the Emperor's Palace. And you see all these Mitsubishi mark. All these buildings are owned by Mitsubishi and Mitsubishi Company as well. And I used to work for when I do import-export, I always used to work for Mitsubishi International, Mitsubishi Corporation, which is an import-export company. Like Mitsubishi Group, you might not know some of them that you might not know as a part of Mitsubishi Group, other than Mitsubishi names. NYK is a large shipping company. That's one of the major group company in there. And other one that you might not know, like Nikon, the camera Nikon is part of the Mitsubishi Group. Or like a Kirin beer is actually a Mitsubishi Group as well. So within the Keiretsu Group, it's very tight-knit group. So when I was working for Mitsubishi, only beer that I drank out in the public was Kirin beer. Or we drove Mitsubishi cars and so on like that. So Keiretsu is very strong. And also when you're looking at economy, as you know, the 2020 Olympic was to happen in Japan, but of course then that happened in 2021, and got postponed to 2021, but it's still a question mark whether it's going to happen or not. And a lot of Japanese economy geared towards this hype towards 2020 Olympic, including real estate and everything else as well. A lot of the hotel did renovations, almost the 80% of a major hotel in Tokyo did a renovation, and we built a lot of condominiums we'll be using as a village for the athletes, and after that it was going to be for condo use as well. And I think we built closer to 1,400 units. But what happened is the people who bought those condos going to be delayed interim for another 1 more year or so. So we'll see how that goes on the economy. And of course, the COVID-19 has affected the economy like anywhere else in the world, especially in the service industry as well. When you look at Japan, Japan's actually a highest in the world for debt. We are 240% of GDPs are debt. But until recently, offset by trade surplus and foreign currency portfolio, but it's changing right now. Raised consumption tax rate from 8 to 10% in 2019. What does that mean for real estate in Japan? Basically, consumption tax is like a sales tax. When you buy a house, the buyer does pay the sales tax. So 2% sales tax increase could be a big deal for people who buy a house. And whether you know or not, Japan is the largest holder of U.S. debt with $1.266 trillion in Treasury holding as of April of 2020. And second, China is the second largest debt holder for United States. And you do look at business culture. Business culture in Japan is a high context culture like many of the Asian countries. And building a relationship is very important. And giving a traditional Japanese building a relationship, a good example is when I used to work for a corporate travel company, we used to entertain clients for almost a year before we even start talking about business. and we just go drinking together. Entertaining, Asian culture, we go drinking together. And why do we go drinking as part of that is we feel that you get drunk and you show yourself. And what happens is that you're going to show the worst part of yourself. So you have basically, you held hostage to each other. That the bad part about it. Now we could talk serious, we could talk about business. And when you do a business, that's including the real estate and so forth, introduction is a must. You need to be introduced. If you want to see somebody, you need an introduction. It's very difficult to just call up or, even, call up or you write an email, get an appointment. You have to be introduced by somebody. So you got to know the right person in Japan to start the business. So why am I saying that is if you ever want to travel to Japan, just let me know and I'll make a good introduction to you. So for travel to Japan and you'll be able to see, your fellow realtors in Japan or CIPSs, we'll talk about a little bit. And, and they'll be more than happy to take care of you when you're in Japan. And as you know, how we use names, last name is used all the time. And it's very important to use the title or Mr. and so forth. And until they ask you to call first name, make sure you say Mr. somebody, Miss somebody, and so forth. And the business cards. As you know, Japanese way of doing business card is probably the most strict compared to the rest of even Asia. For Japanese card, one of the things that you have to do is you see on the picture, you hold up the business card so that they can read it. When you receive it with both hands, and you pause and look at the business card, then maybe put it away. But what you should be doing is you should be having a business card carrier, a little pocket carriers, and you should be taking a business card one by one as you exchange business card. And you usually exchange business cards starting from a hierarchy, then it goes down the line. And even when we do a business, we usually have a seating assignment when we have a business meeting as well. And one of the other things that's kind of important in Japan is nemawashi. What's nemawashi is a consensus prior to negotiation decisions. In other words, they usually have a meeting to have a meeting and before the meeting. And usually a lot of the things are discussed, just like the international trade, everything is usually discussed. And the actual meeting itself is a lot of times just a formality to just confirm what we negotiated. And usually that's done. So a lot of meetings behind the scene takes place to do a lot of things as well. So why don't we look at real estate in Japan? Home ownership rate is about 61.2%. It's about 1.5 million transactions in Japan. If you look at it, average size in the single-story home, it's a single-family home, is about 700 square feet. And in Japan, it's about 80% new construction and 20% resale market. Why? One of the things, Japan does not have MLS. Rented house is about a third of the market. So market is, most of the market is, 1/3 is about property management. And share house and common living for younger generations are starting to happen because, especially on the rental market, because the price is very expensive. And in real estate in Japan, the interesting fact is, on the tax purposes, after 25 years old building has no tax value. So the tax depreciate and the land price increases. That's the only way you're going to get an increase. And there's 8.2 million vacant houses in Japan. Why? And a couple of the things is reason why that happens. Why there's 8.2 million vacant houses? Number one, right after the World War II, this law just recently changed. Right after World War II, when everything was destroyed in Japan, they give a 60% tax incentive, 60% off if you rebuild on the property that you had. So the people rebuilt it. So long as there's a building there, there was a 60% off on your property taxes. And other thing is number two is the inheritance tax in Japan is very expensive. Right now it's about 60%. So let's say you inherited a $1 million house, that your parents die, you inherit a $1 million house. You're gonna have to come up with basically $600,000 to be able to take you inherit your parents' house. So a lot of people don't have a $600,000 inherit house. And just remember, we have no MLSs, so resale market is not quite there. And so it's very difficult. So a lot of people say, what they say is, I don't have a $600,000, so I'm just going to give it up. So they make no claim. So there's a lot of vacant houses. Out of 8.2 million vacant houses, about 6 million vacant houses actually, you see it like decapitating or just standing there. One of the reasons is they don't want to pay more taxes as long as the building's there, or I can inherit it. Here you go, government, take it. So there's a lot of tax foreclosure, but till 2 years ago, government was able to, basically local jurisdiction, usually it's the prefecture, which is equivalent to state, or sometimes it's city, they could foreclose the property, but there was no way of reselling the property. There was no law that was in place that you could resell the property, not like in the United States, you have the tax foreclosure sales and so forth. So that law changed. So now they could resell it, or now they have permission to take the building out and sell it as a raw land. So that's changing. And one of the biggest things, difference in Japan and US is, so that's the vacant house situation. And other thing is, we're aging population. About 25% is 65 plus years old, and 33% by 2050, 33%. Third of the population is 65 plus, which is into retirement age in Japan is 65, compared to 16% to 23% in US. What does that mean is we are going to, in a social services system, we are going to have a lot of trouble coming up in 25 years right now, because there are going to be, we talk about our social security system in the United States, not sustainable. Japan is truly not sustainable. So a lot of the investment in senior housing is increasing, barrier-free listings, or some type of, active adult living situations, or in a convalescent home and so forth. Those are things that are very increasing. Those are the hot items in Japan as far as investment is concerned. How about land in Japan? Scarcity of land. Land prices have risen in recent years. Land prices keeps going up. And of course, because the building kind of goes down. You see this little subdivision here, but look at how small the lots are. You can see the comparison to the car parked nearby, how these lots are, how small these lots are. Many small landholders, small land parcels. There's a land lease system as well, but mostly the lands are owned. A landowner maintains the title, leaseholder receives the right to construct and occupy buildings. But still right now, by land and a building as a package as well. So one of the interesting is, maybe whenever we go to Tokyo, especially Narita Airport, even within the airport on the runway or in that playing area, you'll see like a fenced off, maybe 10, 15 square feet area in middle of the airport. Because those are actually landholders who didn't want to give up when the airport was built almost 50 years ago. So those things still happens. Basically your planes wing is going over these land, and they have, it's a landlocked, but some landlord says, no, I don't want to sell it. So whenever you try to do a public infrastructure, it's a very difficult and it's a hard process for infrastructure to be built by buying up the land, because there's not basically an eminent domain law like the United States have. And because, why is that, is one of the things is, land is considered passed on to generation in Japan. So they hold land very close to them when they have it. So that's one of the reasons why, even remember we had the tsunami back in 2013, almost 7-8 years ago. Everything was destroyed in the northern part of Japan, but they're still not rebuilding yet, because government is now willing to give subsidies to rebuild homes on the places where the big tsunami destroyed. Government said, you need to build it higher up. But a lot of the landlord or the owner says, I want to build on my land, my ancestry's land. So there's a lot of friction and negotiation been done. That's one of the reasons why that's still, the recovery is still kind of slow, in my opinion, compared to other places. And like those tsunami part, right now is about 80% of people who had a land there or there, they came back even if they evacuated temporarily. compared to Katrina. Katrina, about only 34% of people who evacuated from New Orleans area came back to New Orleans. So that's a whole lot of big difference in how people feel about their homeland, so to speak, your own land. And when you look at real estate, can homeowners own the real estate? Purchasing the property, no restriction or conditions, no government permission or approvals needed, free flow of capital, may establish and operate a business in Japan. However, foreigners might run into mortgage financing or obstacle. Only that you may need a Japanese cosigner or sign of permanence favored, meaning that you make sure that you declare. But as far as owning a property is concerned, probably Japan is the most unrestricted place in the world, very close, because there's no like a FERPTA tax, like US is concerned, that you just buy and sell as freely as possible, other than that you might not be able to get a financing. But there are more ways that it's getting financing as well. But you know, there are many banks that will give financing for foreign property that you might want to own as well. So Japan might be a pretty easy place to do. Far as the cap rates are concerned, if you want to buy investment property, if you buy a, let's say, condominium in Tokyo and so forth, they probably have a higher cap rate than, let's say, buying in San Francisco, or maybe some parts of, you know, LA, or like a Westwood or somewhere. You might have a higher cap rate, and, you know, remember, and there's no MLS there. So, and no resale is not a big market. So actually buying some resale condominium, doing a little bit of renovation might be, potentially could be a better investment than maybe investing in somewhere in the United States, you know, high priced areas compared to like a San Francisco or even LA. And when you look at a rental property, it's a pro landlord. Rental requirements for the foreigners usually advance payment, 5 to 7 month rent. Key money, thank you for privilege of renting, or thank you for renting me an apartment or whatever. It's usually about 1 month. Transfer the rent payments from the tenant's bank account. Everything in Japan is a direct transfer, direct withdrawal. That's been happening for almost all the utilities and everything else as well. And you will need a foreign resident registration card in order to rent apartment. In other words, you have to prove that you're here with a proper visa. Of course, the highest rent in Tokyo area, you see on the picture, this is about 250 square feet for $1,200 a month. So one room. In Japan, condominium are considered as a mansion. We call the condominium mansion. I have no idea why you say mansion, but it's called mansion. So this is a one room mansion, about 200 square feet, $1,200. You got a little kitchenette, and to the back of the kitchen, you see it's called unit bath. They just basically drop the whole entire bathroom in there, including the toilets, sink, and, you know, bathtub. And this could go for $1,200 a month in the middle of the Tokyo. So why don't we talk a little bit about how the real estate professionals are. The sales agent licensing is to get a license, sales agent needs a licensing. It's a 1 test per year, and passing rate is about 15 to 20% rate. And it's about 1 million licensee in Japan. But what big difference is the one licensee actually can supervise up to 5 employees. The employees could do everything, but only one thing. There's things, process called explaining the important matters. It's like explaining the important part of the purchase and sales agreement have to be done by a licensee. And right now, that needs to be done face to face. That means that's could be the one obstacle that foreign investor might have, is that you're going to have to do face to face. Right now, video conference is not accepted, but there are ways to go around that. So we could figure out, but legally speaking, technically speaking, that's what could be a one obstacle for buying a property in Japan. If you're single individual, you really don't want to travel to Japan and listen to a Japanese person talking about Japanese thing. You have absolutely no idea what they're talking about. And Ministry of Construction actually regulates commission rates. It sets statutory limit. It's usually 3% on each side, but usually a buyer pays the buyer's agent, and seller pays the seller's agent. But you could receive a commission from both sides up to basically 6%. And like I said, there's no MLS. We do have a system called RAINS. It's called Real Estate Information Network System. It's a government subsidized entity. And when they created this, almost about 10 years ago, they took it from the MLS from the US. But one thing that they did not take it back was for MLS, as most of you know, and most of us know, most important about MLS is cooperation and compensation. We cooperate and make sure that we put the right information, correct information in. The compensation is, determined through the MLS, and we know how much we're going to have. They didn't take any of the rules and regulations the MLS had. Remember, US's MLS is established in the early 1920s. So MLS has been around for a long time in US. So Japan said that's a great system, but they took the data part back to Japan, but they didn't take any rules in. The only rules that they created was you must input a listing into this range. Every single listing that's in there, especially. But what happened is that was the only rule they put it in. So what other people will do, they'll put it in and they'll take it right out. So 90% of the transactions usually done are dual agency. Because there's no MLSs, when you go to a B2C site, and there's about several large, real estate sites, just like, Zillows and so forth. But what it is, and because since there's no MLS, what you do is it's not exclusive listing. You have a multiple listing service where you contract it out with a multiple real estate offices or company. Then whoever brings the buyer gets the commission. So when you go to public site, B2C site, you see the same listing sometimes 7-8 times. And some of them might be different on the prices. Pictures kind of look the same, but different angles and so forth. So it's very confusing to public to have to look at on the website. So you see on the picture of left, there'd be a typical, real estate office that's a mom and pop office. Most of it is a mom and pop office with, one licensee with 5 employees or so, or 2 licensees, because remember, you can have about 5 employees. So it's 90% is done. And a lot, like the small cities in the United States, most of the real estate office does property management, resale, new construction, commercial, and they do a lot of flips as well. Because of non-MLS system, a lot of things that they do is they'll buy the property and they'll renovate and flip. Remember, there's no MLS system, so the real estate agent is like just telling you from the experience. So think about it. How do you do CMA in Japan? US, we're easy. We'll go to MLS and we'll look at the active pending, sold. But how do you get sold information? Number one, Japan is not an open country, meaning that it is we do not file a purchase price or a sold price into government. It's not recorded. And the loan amount is recorded, but actually it's not recorded. It's very difficult to get those information. It's not a public record, it's concealed most of the time. So what do you do? That's why they only operate in mom and pop size and maybe about 1 kilometer, less than a 1 mile radius area. That's where they're going to operate because that's all they could keep the market on. So if somebody else, other office sells some certain houses, to get information on how much they sold for, they basically physically go to their office, to their homes, and knock on the door, says, hey, Mark, Mr. Kitabayashi, looks like you moved into the neighborhood, you bought a great home, and here's a gift card for $100. Can you tell me how much you bought this house for, if you don't mind? That's how they collect the data. Because unless it's sold by your office or your a franchise, you might not have the data. So those are very, very slow way of doing business, very old-fashioned, so to speak. And the largest franchise in Japan is actually Century 21. How about over 1,000 offices? And House U is a Japan-based franchise. They have about 700 offices. The ERA/Lixo. Lixo owns the ERA. Lixo might not be familiar. They do a lot of ceramic, toiletry, and so forth. And they actually own the American ceramic company, American Standard, that you might be familiar with, the toilets and sinks and so forth. They own American Standard, so that's their parent company. So that's how the real estate professionals are in Japan. So what do we look at NAR in Japan? How it does? We have a bilateral relation with 5 real estate associations. Actually, there's 6 large associations. Of course, your Western Gateway Valley Realtor has a association MOU with the Jericho. Jericho is Japan American Real Estate Coalition Office. Jericho was created about 7 years ago. I guess I would say 7 years ago, in conjunction with the Japanese government and also with the NAR. And Jericho was created in order to coordinate the effort, a real estate information effort between United States and Japan, and especially with the NAR and Japan 5 associations. So Jericho is like a coordinating association, and they do a lot of joint research with NAR and do a lot of visits and so forth. They take care of us when I go to Japan, or they take care of us when our leadership from Realtor goes. Or, even with you, if you choose to go to Japan to visit, even for, pleasure visit, let me know and I will hook you up with the people from Jericho. They could show you around and they might be able to give you some, tours of Japanese real estate and so forth. And Ambassador Association to Japan is a Seattle King County Realtors, which is in here in Washington State. And Japan has about 450 IRMs. That's the International Realtor members. We're one of the largest number in the world as far as IRMs are concerned. So this is a kind of quick overview of Japan. And I will toss it back to Francis in a minute, but whenever you're in Japan, or if you're traveling to Japan, please feel free to contact me. And my contact information is on the screen, and you can always get it from through NAR site or wherever. And please call me Sal. You go friend me on Facebook, whatever. And these are my contact information. So thank you very much for letting me spend a little time with you explaining Japan and Japan's real estate. And I'll turn it back to Francis now. Francis?
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. I've learned so much today. And I'm pretty sure everyone has a lot of questions. So we'll go straight into our Q&A session. This session will be moderated by Shenzhen, our Global Business Council Co-Vice Chair. Shen, you have the floor.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Mark, for the detailed information on Japan. Definitely, the way of real estate dealing is definitely different than the U.S. So here's some questions for you.
Sure. So
you said the lands, most of the owners are holding to generation. So most likely they're not selling. They still have to be responsible to pay some kind of taxes during the time that they're holding, or?
Yes, we have a property tax, just like United States. And that's one of the reasons, but they hold the land generation. Yes, there is a property tax that's there. Other than that, there's no taxes. I mean, just like United States, a very similar taxing system is very similar to Japan, US.
How high are they in the US? Most, like for California, depending on the location, average is 1.25. How's the property tax in?
Property tax is a little bit under 1% in most of the places. So it's a little bit cheaper than the United States.
Okay, that's good. So you said the one room mansion, 250 square feet. Normally for that size, is a family living in there, or?
No, it's usually a single person or maybe two couple, but it's usually a single person.
Okay. So is it pretty popular for that size in Japan?
Yeah, because there's a lot of, especially in the city area where, just like in a lot of cities, in a lot of apartments for single person and so forth. And what it is in Japan, and one interesting thing is how the anywhere in the, even the US, location. For Japan, it's how close to the train station is how they determine the location. Is it a 5-minute walk or 5 minutes of bus ride? Or those are things that makes the property value more important in Japan. Of course, in a lot of places, like good example is in Tokyo, and a lot of houses don't have a parking space. So you have a different parking area that you rent another parking spaces. In Tokyo, you are not able to buy a car unless you have a certificate saying that you have a place to park. And one other important thing is, because no resale and people stay on the property, in Japan, people only buy maybe once or twice in a lifetime. They don't do a lot of resale like, every 7-10 years like United States do.
Wow, so just once they buy it, they pretty much settle down.
So when you as a real estate agent, most of the your marketing is going to be for looking for a new client, because your client, or at least to build a referral base, but you don't have a lot of repeat clients unless they're investors.
I understand when you said about train station. I've been to, I went to Japan a year ago with the family to visit there. You see train station basically every corner. And they're so convenient and high tech, even though you don't speak that language, but you have no problem going down point A to point B. And people there are so friendly and so polite as well, as we all know. My other question, you said there's not much guideline through the government. As a buyer, do they still do diligent investigations, such as looking at the first?
Yeah, you do. And remember, in Japan, maybe I should a little bit. Purchase. I mean, what we do is the process is a little bit different in the U.S. U.S. what you usually do is we agree on the purchase and sales agreement. Then we have a contingency, like inspection or financing or whatever. Then we goes to closing. But like in Japan, like some other area as well, you actually sign give an offer, and you do not sign the final purchase and sales agreement till closing table. A closing in Japan, you fit face-to-face between buyer and the seller, and judicial scrivener, who is basically like acting like escrow, that they will do the sign the final purchase and sales agreement, then they go record, and you kind of sit in a room. It's a whole day deal. That's one of the reasons why some of your agent people understand as well. That's why a lot of agents like to negotiate till the end, because that's how they do real estate in Japan. You negotiate till the end, when you sign and shake your hand at the closing table. And also the inspection is starting to happen in Japan as well. But actually the inspection is done by the seller, and basically seller do the inspection and fix everything, and basically giving a certification, say, hey, we did an inspection and house is good to go. It's not a buyer beware like United States is.
Interesting. We have a question from Miho Yanagisawa. Sorry if I pronounced it incorrectly. Does Jericho MOU provide membership to agents, brokers in the US, and what is the benefit?
Jericho does provide. I don't think there's there's no reason to be part of the Jericho membership, because as a Realtor member, Jericho is a group of that, so you'll be able to participate in everything that the Jericho offers in Japan. So if you have more questions, Miho-san, you could contact me, and I could let you know as well. And I mean, we're part of the Realtor family, so.
Great. Now the other question, I know you mentioned earlier that as a foreigner buying investment in Japan, most likely at the end, it's sometimes hard to get a loan. So as a U.S. citizen buying property, can they keep it for a long time, or forever?
Yeah. There is no restriction period. So some of the investor who wants to do, sometimes they will basically, you get a HELOC in the United States and take the money out, then use that money to buy in Japan. That's been the most popular things that my clientele from US does in Japan.
Okay. Good. Fanny, too, also have a question for the migration trend from Japan. Ranked of top destinations and to US, top US cities, states, and destinations.
Okay, the top cities, of course, is the Southern California. I mean, people say LA, but as you know, not everywhere is LA. The Southern California is the most top migration-wise is concerned. As far as the individual investments are concerned, Hawaii is still the most popular place for Japanese people.
Is there a reason why they like Hawaii? Is this because the island, or?
Yeah, it's close enough, and they'll buy as either second home, or they buy as a second home / investment. So Hawaii, it's the closest. It's only a 5-hour plane ride, so it's the closest and it's the most popular place in LA. And one of the hot places right now is a lot of places people moving out from LA, San Francisco, West Coast is definitely for individual buying places. And Japanese people, how they invest in the United States is they only invest in the places where when the Japanese people think of the United States. So it's be large cities. That's a little bit different than maybe a Chinese trend where Chinese people are buying everywhere. One of the most popular places, this would be a funny story, and maybe you guys know that as well. Toyota USA used to have a headquarters out in the Torres. And that's why everybody, but as you know, several years ago that they moved the headquarters to Plano, Texas, which is outside of Dallas. Now, for Japanese people, Dallas is one of the most popular places right now because they see it is, oh, if it's good enough for Toyota, it must be good enough for us. So there's a lot of investment going towards for single family homes. Of course, Dallas area is a lot more economic or cheaper than, LA or San Francisco or even from Seattle. So there's always a trend. Or like Ohio is becoming, or Huntsville, in places where a lot of the auto manufacturers are there for US factories. That's where the people are still looking at as far as the investment is concerned. But still, the LA is the largest as far as the investments coming in, I think.
Okay, good. Another more questions we have. From the top breakdown of foreign real estate investment by Japanese investor, what are the area? You just mentioned Dallas or Texas and
LA is always a high.
One of them. Great. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, and and this is why I'm talking as far as the investment single family homes and so forth for single investors. Of course, there's a lot more corporate investment that comes in. There are a lot of JVs and everything else. So that's a whole lot of different story. But as an individual, I mean, you're looking as a residential real estate agent, yeah, LA still is the probably the most popular place.
From Thomas Wong, back in the 80s, it was common for Japanese investors to buy golf courses, resort. How are those investments being diverted nowadays?
Right now, there's not too many that's buying the large properties right now because those are during the bubble era, Japanese bubble era, where they're buying golf course. And, a good example is good example in the bubble economy. I could give you a good example, a few of them. Of course, like Hawaii's hotels and condominiums. Back in the days, about 70% of the hotel in Hawaii, even though you have the Sheraton or Marriott brand or whatever it might be, was owned by Japanese people. And one of the biggest purchases that Japanese did in the U.S. was, some people might remember, back in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, they bought Rockefeller Center in New York. And they have to sell it right back out because what happened was they had so much money they wanted to buy American symbol. What they did was, remember the Manhattan, and some of you are from there. Manhattan's a lot of the economy and commercial buildings are controlled by the Jewish people. So when they did it, they raised a lot of price on the other buildings and they made the Rockefeller Center appear to be cheaper than others. So Japanese people just had money, so they jumped on it. Mitsubishi Group did. You know what happened? As soon as they buy it, they just drop it to the normal price. So the Rockefeller Center became the most expensive in New York. So at the end of when the bubble burst, they couldn't hold on to it, so they sold it back. But anyway, so that's kind of background on the large commercials.
There's a question from Gloria. She wants to know, since LA is one of the top location that Japanese are interested to invest in, is there a specific city they're interested in, or just overall as California?
Overall, LA, Southern California, and you guys probably should know more than I do. I mean, I grew up in LA, but I don't practice in LA. But LA, I think by percentage-wise, I think that LA has the most Japanese-speaking real estate agent as well. So, those people who's dealing with the investor will know that. But they're buying in many different places. I have several, realtor friends that's in the LA area. They're buying from, Marina Del Rey's to, Marina Del Rey's, of course, start being called as a Silicon Beach. So they're getting very popular. And a lot of the Japanese people who buy, especially immigrate or some temporary being here as a business, of course, Palos Verdes and northern part, I should say northern part, going up towards the hill of the Palos Verdes, and those are probably the most popular area. And when I used to live in LA, Gardena, Torrance was the most popular place for Japanese people to live. That's back in the 70s and 80s, and they're kind of moving up the hill.
Right. Actually, Montebello was one of location has a lot of Japanese as well.
Yeah, Monterey Park, Montebello used to have, a lot of these first, second generation Japanese who was immigrated here lived there. So,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're down to one more questions. So for for the once the transactions started, is there a third party handles the transactions such as attorney or escrow officer like the U.S. or?
No, there's not. Basically, the real estate agent work together, and only on the closing, a judicial scrivener will be there to basically be like a glorified notary. They handle the recordings and final, basically proofing the contract that you guys sign. And remember, there's no MLS, so there's not a set contract. So every company has a different contract as well. That's why it's very confusing as well. So no, there's not a third party. There's no escrow or title insurance in Japan.
Okay. Actually, one more question from Cecilia. She's wondering the contract version in English or Japanese, foreigners own property are possible. Yes, Mark already answered that earlier, but I guess the question, the contract version in English or Japanese?
It's in Japanese. Definitely in Japanese. Just like our contract here is in the United States in English.
Okay.
So it'll be in Japanese.
So that's all the questions I have. Let me just double check one more time. So, okay. Well, thank you very much for all the answers, for all the details.
You're welcome.
So now, right now, we will move to the lucky drawing sections. Pauline, please, the floor is yours.
I want to thank Mr. Mark Kitabayashi for your wonderful, informative, and fabulous presentation. We did learn a lot today, and I learned one word, new word is nemawashi. And thank you so much. You teach us a lot of information regarding Japan. We can't wait to travel to Japan soon. And right now it's our happy hour. Thank you, Shen. And now it's our lucky draw time. And we want to thank our great sponsor, Joe Lim and Teresa Nguyen, for their generosity gift card. We have a 2 lucky draw 25 Amazon gift card today. We wish you to be the lucky winner. And when we call your name, please text your name, text say you are here, or you let us know you are here. Just release your video. And Albert, let's
all right.
Start.
Wow.
Mindy, yeah. Mindy, our 2020 president.
She's here.
Congratulations.
I'm here. You can.
So
I'll give it
our
away.
second one. Mindy, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm gonna give it away.
She donated back.
Donate it back.
Thank you, Mindy.
Dang Wu. Dang, are you here? He's not here. Let's move on. Draw again, Albert. Huan Yang is not here. Albert.
Yes, I am here.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Congratulations, Sil.
Thank you.
Amy Kong. Amy Kong is not here.
Not here. Okay.
Claire Smith. Not here. York Liu, York, from Cotai Realty. Uh-oh. York is not here.
No, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here.
Okay, who's there.
Oh, you're here,
I'm here.
okay.
I'm here.
Great, congratulations. So we have
Congratulations.
two, right? I can only hear what, we have two winners already, right?
Yes,
Congratulations. My internet a little bit problem. I only can hear the York is the second one. Anyhow, thank you so much. This is so wonderful and happy hour for our lucky draw section today. Francis,
Back to me.
Yes, back to you.
Okay. On behalf of the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors, we would like to thank Mark Kitabayashi for your informative presentation, and our sponsors, Joe Lam, Theresa Nguyen for Loan Direct for their generous gift. So please remember to join our upcoming Global Real Estate Market Trend Series in the months of August and September. Our 8th Global Real Estate Market Trend Series is on Friday, August 21st at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Our special speaker is Ms. Liu Nguyen, NAR Global Ambassador to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Indonesia. Her topic is Cambodia Real Estate Today. The whole session is being recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel, West San Gabriel Valley Realtors. Thank you all for joining our session today. This session is now adjourned. Stay safe, stay healthy,